Akinola Olojo. He is in Dakar, Senegal. He is a senior researcher in the Transnational Threats and International Crime Program at the Institute for Security Studies. Akinola, welcome to the program. I mean, it's very difficult to get precise information about what's happening in that part of Nigeria. There could well be a media blackout. We don't know. So give us an overall assessment of security in Nigeria. Does anybody actually know how many armed groups there are in the country?
No, thank you for having me. No, there are quite a number of these groups. The ones which make the headlines, of course, are the Boko Haram factions. So you have at least two factions of Boko Haram in the northeast, and then of course in the northwest, the north central. There are quite a number of episodes of abductions for ransom. You have groups that are involved in banditry, raiding communities. You have crisis linked to land disputes involving farmers and herders. So the spectrum is quite wide, but it's not only in northern Nigeria, also beyond the north. Other parts of the country, other zones of the country also reflect insecurity, in varying, on varying levels. So it's quite a problem, and it's quite striking to note that when the president was, elected into office, actually Nigerians voted him into office based on three pillars or reasons. One of which was to address the economy, one was to address the problem of corruption, and the third, and perhaps the most important, was to address insecurity. So I think it's something which, the gravity is quite, it's quite telling, and the scale of the recent attack in Katsina, the one which we're reporting on, is one which tells us that the severity is very high.
Absolutely. In terms of what's happening in Katsina, in the northwest, it does appear that many abductions happen in the hope that the abductors will get a ransom. Does that speak to you of poverty and the social situation, or is it that they want to use the proceeds from ransom to finance terrorism?
No, it raises a lot of points. I mean, you rightly mentioned, and that's the home state of the president himself. The first thing to note, even saying that, is the fact that this attack happened or coincided with the visit of the president to that state. And those who were involved or who are involved in this attack are actually passing a message across that even though the highest level of leadership is represented or present in the state, they are capable of doing what they want to do and anytime they want to do it. Now, the second thing, it speaks about the governance gaps. Now, Katsina State, which is the location of the attack, is situated in the northwest of Nigeria. Now, each time Nigeria's National Bureau of Statistics publishes, figures, on what's happening in terms of poverty, Katsina State, and indeed the zone to which it belongs, and the entire northern region, often has the highest level of relative and absolute poverty in the country. And that tells us that governance gaps are very wide. And the leadership needs to address this and prioritize this. So even those who were abducted, the schoolboys who were abducted, now schooling levels or education levels are very low. So even those who are who have the opportunity to go to school, they are not even safe. So this tells us again that even physical security as well as human security in its broadest sense is also lacking. And I think it really speaks to the need for government to really address the governance gaps, the deprivation levels, and to do this with a sense of urgency.
Has Muhammadu Buhari not done that? Because you're clearly indicating that whether he's lost complete control of the security situation or not, he's certainly not delivering on that promise to make sure that Boko Haram didn't even exist. According to his own timetable, it should have been destroyed by now, the terror group. But is he not doing the governance and helping people's social situation enough to improve security without having to hire more members of the army and point guns at people?
Now, I think the evidence really speaks for itself. The evidence is very clear based on the attacks, the series of attacks, the gravity of the situation, the scale, the frequency and the impact, even in terms of humanitarian, the humanitarian context or emergency. It clearly shows that the leadership has not lived up to expectation, and there is a lot that has not been done and still needs to be done. So even when the leadership claims to have addressed or defeated, for instance, Boko Haram, it's really far from reality. Boko Haram is still thriving. Attacks are still happening, on a near daily basis. The impact is very clear. Internally displaced persons, especially in the northeast of the country, it's increasing in terms of the numbers. And the overall, situation really shows very clearly that, the leadership gaps or the governance gaps are quite, quite striking. And at a time when, we're having, even a pandemic, it all the more complicates the problem. So it's a combination of, it's a complex emergency, more or less, And I think, this is a time when not only the government, but also the Nigerian people need to call for accountability. And this is why just, 2 months ago in October, Nigerians went to the streets, even on online platforms. There was a mobilization of people, calling for reforms, in governance, in the security sector.
Absolutely. Akinola, really fascinating. And thank you so much indeed for the insight. Akinola Olojo from the Institute for Security Studies.